TSM, they're just going to keep things the way that they are because it's now worked for them 2 games in a row. But I wonder whether or not that Gragas just becomes a first pick for Haunter, or whether or not they say, you know what, we're actually way more interested in keeping control over the Karma pick.
You know, the Gragas, it was very potent. Stark played it well, but at the same time, Haunter was really able to step up and utilize the Nautilus very well too.
I mean, he certainly was. I felt like that and a lot of those fights, though, especially in the TPs that he used, were very reminiscent of the Haunter of the regular season.
Well, he's definitely been stepping up in these past couple of games. He'll have to do it one more time to help TSM get the win here. Bans are looking eerily similar to what we've seen the past couple of games, Vedius. TSM has found their groove in terms of having these play out the way they want them to. The Ziggs and Kinnan both going to be taken off the table. Opponents responding with Shen and Lulu. Now, if this goes the same way as the previous games, it's going to be LeBlanc and Ivern to round it out. LeBlanc will come in.
I feel like the Ivern's actually going to be left off the boards. And I wonder what they go for. Like, they could potentially ban the Gragas, or they could ban the Lot. But now I think you're asking TSM to first pick the Gragas, because...
Almost, yeah.
If they don't, then they're running out of answers, right? Do you then maybe pick a carry into it? Or do you instead just continue to pick the Karma? I mean, it's worked beautifully for Biofrost. It's given their laning phase a lot more consistency, I feel, especially when they were in that deficit in Game 4. They were able to come back thanks to the power that Karma does have during the laning phase.
Well, they do decide to go for the Karma. They're saying, you know, Gragas is up, but we want the Karma more. So the Gambit from the side of the Marines to remove that pick that Haunter was able to use successfully into the Gragas has paid off. They now will no longer be able to have the Nautilus, and Grag still ends up in the hands of Stark.
I think that the Graves is fine. But I don't know. I feel like that when I look at Levi, I just want to see more playmaking from him. You know, like, I just feel that he's
seem like him.
He's so much more proficient on champions like Elise and Lee Sin. But regardless, it's what he's decided. This is the final game, so they have to be feeling confident. I'd be a little bit surprised if the TSM locked in the Ivern, because Graves has always been considered a counter pick into Ivern, largely because he can match the scaling. And while he doesn't provide the same level of utility, he certainly makes up for it in terms of damage. And when you think of early trading power, sure, Ivern has some pretty powerful ganks around the level 4 mark, but Graves can really match it if you end up in those small skirmishes. And Svenskeren in the last 2 games really has been a big factor in a lot of these fights.
Well, with that Ivern picked up, it'll be the first time this series we get to see it. And TSM's going to go ahead and take Syndra
this
early.
It's going to be a fizz. This is definitely going to be a fizz from Optimus. No reason not to.
Right there. Realizes he has to do it right now, too, or he'd get banned away.
So Bjergsen, during the laning phase, this is very much like the Orianna matchup, but not quite as safe. In team fights, it's going to be so much easier for Optimus to be able to kill that Syndra. So we can talk more about that matchup when we get into the game. But now, 80 carries. Remember, the Gigabyte Marines get first pick.
Right.
The best thing for them to do right now is ban away as many ADs as possible and lock in the first rotation, which is likely going to be the Ashe once again. Now, Slay, compared to his Ziggs, it definitely hasn't been quite the outstanding individual, but his arrows have been pretty consistent. And it's fascinating how TSM are actually shifting things up. So now I wonder whether or not they leave the Varus up, they ban away the Ezreal for Gigabyte Marines, and then they look to try and get themselves an early Varus.
Decisions. Pressure is on. 5th game of the series. One ban could make a big difference in how the game ultimately plays out and how the compositions ultimately take shape here. 4 seconds left. You can tell they're taking all the time possible to think this one through, and Lucian will be the ban.
All right. I mean, okay, so I think the reason why they banned Lucian is because when you consider like a protect the AD composition, that makes a lot more sense, putting a Lucian in there rather than someone like an Ezreal. So basically both of the superstar AD carries that revolve around this build around a single champion build have been kind of taken off the board.
Well, TSM definitely still has a team that's capable of peeling and protecting any kind of a carry between Karma and Ivern. It is so hard to kill somebody.
They could very well go for a Camille top lane. Now, after the nerfs, she has been considered slightly lower in terms of value, but I feel that given Haunter's performance in the last 2 games, and given how consistently he's actually been dumpstering on Stark, maybe you just take the gamble. Maybe you do lock in the Camille and you just look to play around Haunter as your superstar carry.
Well, Varus has been locked in for Slay. You can tell Turtle's thinking about that Ezreal by how long he's been sitting on the hover. His performance on the champion was good in game number 3. Looks like we're going to get to see him here in game number 5 as well. One more pick for TSM. What do you round this comp out with in the top lane? And the answer is Renekton.
All right.
Now this, Vedius, I'm looking forward to this one, man.
Oh,
because the last time we saw this, remember that Haunter just smacked Stark around.
Yeah, he did. He did.
That was the 3 solo kills. So this time...
Wait, but what if it's not a Gragas top? Like, we talked about it last game where it could be the possible Gragas support.
And it is! So... Okay. All right.
All right.
You got me. Honestly, I'd say that that is the perfect cornerstone to your prediction so far this split, is calling a Gragas support as Rumble is locked in.
I called it last game, and I was a little bit off with that one, but...
Doesn't matter. We forgot about that one already. This one's now.
So the Gragas support coming out, up against the Karma. Interesting bottom lane, a lot of wave clear, but it's the top lane where things are going to get spicy, Captain Cloud.
They are going to be good. You've got Renekton, you've got Rumble, you got big damage potential on both these two. You got huge mid-game power potential on both of these two. Either one of these guys could carry from the top lane.
So I'm going to take my prediction game a step forward. And what I'm going to say is that at level 4, Svenskeren will gank top.
Okay.
Haunter's going to allow Stark to overpush. He's going to overextend. I feel like Levi is actually going to start on the top half of his jungle and go bot. And I think that Svenskeren and Haunter are going to look to get that first play onto Stark and start the snowball in Haunter's favor.
All right. We're going to write that one down and see if that actually comes true. I'm sure TSM would love to have that come true, because that puts them off to a great start, allows Renekton to be the bully he wants to be. Now, as long as Haunter stays more relevant this game than Stark was in his Renekton game, TSM should be able to find some good use out of him. But if he does fall behind like that, this series already showed us what happens to the champion. TSM also, like we mentioned, getting to use Ivern for the first time. Champion banned away very frequently these days. Whether you're competitive, solo queue, anywhere, Ivern is strong.
Oh, he is. He certainly is. And now we get to see him come out from Svenskeren as we go in to what will be the final game of this best-of-5 series.
The one for all the marbles, the one that decides who's got to play on Saturday and who gets to kick back and watch the games without a concern. Now Svenskeren will just hop, skip, and jump his way. That skin is so freaky. There's candy everywhere, and he has these really weird sound effects, and even his running animation, he's just a trip, man. Sweeper comes down very early, and they'll go ahead and get rid of those wards.
Now, the funny thing is, this actually reminds me a lot of the North American finals, where you had 2 big wins for one team. You then had the comeback games for the other team, and then the 5th and final game was a tense, back and forth, extremely long game.
That was such a
where it
good
was
game.
all decided in the final fight. Is that going to be this, Captain?
I really hope that's this. The NALCS Spring Split 2017 finals were one hell of a series to watch. And this could go that same distance. We're already most of the way there. We just need this last game to be epic. As long as this isn't a wash, it'll be a phenomenal ending.
Oh, and there are so many interesting players to watch, right? Optimus on this Fizz. The last time he went up against a Syndra, he demolished them. It was absolute carnage. Optimus even got himself a quadra kill in the top lane in that game.
However, that Syndra wasn't Bjerg.
And that Syndra was not Bjergsen.
So let's see how he can stack up against the man who's been the #1 NALCS mid lane presence for a while now.
And arguably the most consistent performer
right
throughout this entire series. Game 4, if it wasn't for his Orianna play, getting the outplay onto both Optimus and Levi, that fight could have turned out completely different. This guy has really been a big part of the success and the wins for TSM. And now he really does need to perform in what will be a difficult matchup for him.
All right, bottom side, Slay and Archie going to be pushed back a little bit early, but when you've got Gragas support against Karma support, Karma's going to take over a little bit early on.
Once Slay gets a couple levels under his belt, same for Archie, they should have a little bit more pushing power. Trading power is pretty decent too, but you just don't want to risk it against an Ezreal Karma because of how strong their poke is.
Man, Gigabyte Marines have come so far to get to this point. Throwing back to what we talked about when this series first began, a team that everybody was not even really putting on their radar in Group B, because Group B, after the group drawings were done, a lot of people looked at it and said, you know, this is the weaker of the 2 groups. the teams that everybody were watching, the Red Canids and Supermassive, those were in Group A. And then, so they were like, yeah, you know, we're probably going to see some cool moves out of Virtus Pro. We're going to see some stuff out of Lion Gaming. And, oh, yeah, you know, Gigabyte Marines, maybe. And then they come out and they win every game except the very last one when they had already qualified. And now they play up against TSM, win the first 2 games of that, and manage to take them to a full 5. This is a team that has earned the respect and probably the fandom of quite a few viewers out there watching these games so far.
And there's still a great possibility that they can secure themselves that spot in the main MSI event. These guys have been playing exceptionally well. Levi has been given a lot of praise. Stark, at the very early on in the series, has been playing very, very well.
Except for Game 3.
Except for Game 3 and arguably 4. And right now, he's actually struggling in terms of farm. So Haunts has definitely been improving as the game progressed. But then,
that's always an interesting conversation, isn't it? How much of, you know, a very lopsided matchup is one guy playing well and one guy playing poorly? Oh my God, is this the prediction? He was moving up there.
He was, level 4.
If the wave wasn't going the wrong way.
Yeah. I was close.
He almost had it.
The ward from Stark will spot him out, as well as the minion wave pushing towards the tower.
Svenskeren trying to move into enemy territory a little bit deeper here, throw down a ward, pops that Scryer's Bloom just to make sure Levi can't get it. Levi chasing after him, and Svenskeren just decides, nope, not gonna let you take that Scuttle Crab.
And it was actually very dangerous to stand as well because Optimus had priority in mid. He'd already gotten the push, which means that he would have been able to move around to the river much faster than that of Bjergsen. Now we see a little bit more trading down in the bottom lane.
The Gragas is so tanky, though. Haunts are doing some good trades up in the top side against Stark, who is down slightly in farm, but nothing too crazy to write home about just yet. He will have a wave to farm up here, so down about 1 wave.
Though.
Sven chasing him completely away from this, denying him more. Now that is going to make this a noticeable difference.
Yeah, really well. He's going to lose out on a lot of farm. Experience and gold will hurt him a lot. Somewhat what you'd expect from a Renekton, but as the game goes on, this Rumble will have a lot more value in terms of team fights. The big thing for Renekton, though, is he's actually paired up with the Karma as well. So his team fighting is much stronger than you'd naturally expect because he no longer gets kited as easily as he would have in the past. So Slay will certainly be having a rough time.
We'll definitely be keeping an eye on how well Slay can deal with that massive croc heading towards him as we get to the point in the game where those two are going to be seeing each other. But right now, all Slay and Archie really get to deal with is a big face full of Ezreal and Karma, which is a whole lot of poke heading your way pretty much constantly.
Yeah, that's why having that long sword and 3 health pots is always a bit of an advantage. Gives you a little bit more sustain. Deals with the ever-consistent presence of that Karma Ezreal bottom lane. And what I also thought was pretty interesting was that Bjergsen actually went for a very early Megatron cloak, rather, to get that, to deal with that level 6 spike. He was like, I remember the last time this happened. And,
I know what these guys do.
You know what, I will adapt my playstyle.
Not willing to play that game. Interesting thing to point out is that when they did make the level 6 play on him in the last match, he did not use barrier, even though he used flash. The barrier stayed up because he knew it wouldn't save him. So the Negatron cloak, along with the barrier, should be able to allow him to weather that storm.
Yeah, certainly will. He's got flash up too, and I think Bjergsen's also showing just a lot of respect to Optimus. He doesn't have to win the lane right now. He knows that he has a farm advantage. He can just keep farming away. He'll pick himself up the blue buff, which means that in terms of scaling, he's going to be absolutely fine. The big thing that you have to bear in mind against the Fizz is you cannot allow him to get ahead. Doesn't matter if you go even, just don't fall behind. That is the worst case scenario for you to be in.
Oh, we could see some craziness here, Vedius. Levi dropping a ward to try to keep his red buff protected. They want to steal this one. Svenskaren's going to try to channel, but he won't be able to. Having to flash away. The blast cone gets 2 of them over the wall. Svenskeren still gets off to the side. Bjergsen trying to keep himself in a decent spot. Haunts are going to pop the ultimate. Optimus's ultimate not going to be doing a whole lot. Archie making his way into this fight means that TSM has to disengage.
For some reason, I thought that Archie was a top laner. I'm like, hang on, how is there a Rumble and a Gragas in this game? And then I'm like, oh yeah, he's support, and he's roamed up from bottom lane. So Archie, he went back to base. He moved in with Levi. They recognized that the invader was happening, so they knew that if they had the 4 members, then they would have been able to get themselves a couple kills. But Bjergsen holding on to his E, so that anytime Archie tried to go for the engage, he didn't have the level 6, so he didn't have to worry about the ultimate, and they're able to disengage.
And you know, the nice part about Ivern, and one thing that I think goes unnoticed sometimes, is how nice it can be to always have a buff as well as give your buff over to your laners. It's a conversation that's been happening more and more as the champions become more popular, but it's really, really strong to be able to pass those off like that.
Really obnoxious too. Something that we saw from the Direwolves actually was when their mid laner ran Talon. The fact that he could get a double buff whenever he wanted, paired up with an Ivern, meant that his laning was so much stronger than it should have been.
Double buff.
Yep. He's just going to get a quick refresh on that. It's not too bad for Fizz because he's not like that mana reliant. So he'll do okay during the laning phase. It's just going to make it harder because now Bjergsen has even
that
more
much
mana.
more
Yeah,
spam
exactly.
forever. That mana well is never going to run dry as long as that blue buff is ticking. Bjergsen also with ultimate available. Optimus, his will be online here in just a moment from where he tried to use it earlier. Game is still 0-0. Longest we've gone in this series without first blood. Thaddeus. But now Optimus tries to walk into enemy territory as Svenskeren hops out. Pops out Daisy. Chases after him a little bit here. Turtle grabbing some Mystic Shot damage. Levi's hanging around to try to stop these guys if he can. Daisy just gets eviscerated. Answer wants to come over the wall. Flashes the fish. Good stuff, but it's not going to do a whole lot just yet. They head back towards the Drake, who happens to be my favorite big scaly lizard in the whole family. Infernal going to be jumped on now by TSM. Don't really see any way you can test this one with your mid laner hurt, your jungler out of the picture. TSM grabs first elemental Drake of the game.
I mean, Skarner might be offended as his scales are no longer.
He's not a lizard. How is he going to be offended? My favorite play-by-play caster, Vedius.
All right, so the play in which TSM, they move towards the bottom half of the map. They use the teleport in order to try and get a collapse down and see an all-in onto Turtle.
Turtle in some trouble. Having to get himself out of this one. Going to be juggled back by the cat. The heel staying alive. Flash away, and he will barely avoid being first blood.
So close. But it seems like a classic Turtle move. Being alone in lane, ends up getting all in.
The classic Turtle. Hanser now in a situation that he probably smells something funny about. Levi hanging around. Hanser with that Tiamat first and foremost to allow him some extra wave clear potential up here so Stark doesn't just shove him in all day. Very close farm between these two, which is nice considering Stark was down so much earlier.
Yeah.
After that initial force off of the wave and off of the turret by Svenskeren, Stark's been doing a great job keeping himself here, keeping himself relevant.
So let's backtrack. Remember that TP play down bottom was, the whole goal was actually to get themselves a collapse onto Optimus and Levi. Even though they don't get the kills, it's absolutely fine because they forced the smite away from the dragon, resulting in a free objective going in the favor of TSM. They do lose a bit of pressure in the top, but they don't actually lose their top tower. So overall, TSM still maintain control of the early game.
One thing I also want to point out is that Ivern's redemption is completed. So be on the lookout for that the next time there's a fight, the next time there's any pick potential. That's another thing about Ivern, because you're never actually in combat with the jungle creatures. You don't have to worry about buying extra jungle items or anything like that. You just straight rush that redemption on top of the Hunter's Talisman at the start. Allows you to get it active very, very quickly and be able to save your team, keep them nice and safe as time goes on.
It does mean that you lose a bit of vision control, because by picking up the Tracker's Knife, what it also enables you to do is go for a very early sweeper. And by not having that, it means that whenever you try to set up around objective, you're purely relying on the support sweeper, which naturally is not as optimal as having two. Now, what you're seeing here is Levi has just moved down to the bottom lane because he knows that the top lane is guaranteed to go down. This is one of the big discussion points that we had with a lot of the teams in the play-ins, which is that they don't have a good grasp on how to trade turrets. And this is why the Gigabyte Marines are a step above his lawn. Turtle!
Oh, Wild Turtle, no! He drops this time. No summoner spells to keep himself alive. When's he gonna learn? He always puts himself in these spots. But that's okay. Gigabyte Marines, they recognize that. They jump on him. They get the opportunity, and they take him down. Now Stark being attacked by Svenskeren and Daisy together. Hanser doesn't make his way into the fight quick enough, and Slay is going to be left to grab the gold from that turret.
Oh, that was, in fairness, that was a pretty nice
okay, yeah, that was a really nice play.
Yeah, and Wild Turtle just ended up getting caught unawares. He was even able to use his Arcane Shift at the very edge of it too. So he did the best that he could.
All right, apologies for Wild Turtle for thinking that he put himself in a precarious spot again. That was The Wild Turtle no was not required, but he was still finding himself
you can
blooded.
criticize him for using his flash and heal earlier, being in a position that he really should not have been.
Well, we've now got ourselves a game that's not even 100 gold apart, as these two teams are still going to remain even thanks to the 1 kill, of course, going the way of the Marines. But TSM, you know, getting turret first blood, that extra gold coming in through that is going to make up for it.
It really will. Now, one of the big things you have to remember when playing with the Fizz is your severe lack of wave clear. One of the big things that made it difficult for Gigabyte Marines to stall out last game was the fact that Orianna could walk up to a tower, put the ball behind, and there's nothing you can do about it, right? Because it's purely zoning you away, and every time you try to get close, there's always the risk of that shockwave, and every wave that crashes, Ori's going to instantly clear away. Now, Syndra has similar sort of wave clear, but she doesn't quite have that same sort of zoning presence that an Orianna would have in the past. And the all-in power of this Gigabyte Marine squad as they go on to Biofrost.
Ooh, Biofrost putting himself a little far forward. Going to be taken down by the Gigabyte Marines as now Archie might be in some similar trouble. He drops. Stark comes into the fight. Redemption going to be used. Stark taken very, very low, but not low enough to actually drop. TSM turns that around nicely.
So a couple of questionable decisions there. Number one, Biofrost moving up in a way that allowed Slay to get that engage off. But the fact that Stark chose to use that Rumble ult vertically rather than horizontally just baffles me. Like, there were 3 members of TSM in that choke point that I thought, oh, this is bad for TSM. Stark is just going to demolish them. But then he goes onto the Renekton instead of going for the rest of TSM. And that could have been a big swing in the favor of Gigabyte Marines, but instead they don't take that opportunity, and it just ends up being, I believe, a 1 kill for 0 in favor of the Gigabyte Marines.
1 for 1.
One for
Archie
one.
dropped.
Oh, Archie dropped as well. So they traded support.
Slay currently on 2-0 with this Varus, though. The Chains of Corruption connecting every time we've seen him fly off so far. Blade of the Ruined King done. Sitting in a very nice spot as we approach the 15-minute mark. And Blade of the Ruined King makes him a very potent champion if he can manage to get into these fights, manage to fire off a lot of those auto attacks, utilizing the buff from the passive as well that happened earlier on in this split that kind of changed up the style of Varus from the old poke champion to more of an actual traditional style of AD carry. Infernal Drake also going to be spawning here in under 30 seconds. TSM was able to get themselves the first one by forcing the Gigabyte Marines away. And now they will munch up that Scuttle Crab and see what else they can get done here. Maybe if they can set up for a second one, they'll just seize it and make the play happen.
So the problem for the Gigabyte Marines is the fact that Stark doesn't have his teleport available, and notice that Haunts has already started to push up top. There's no minion wave getting in the way. That minion is going to crash, a minion wave rather, is going to crash into the tower. So Gigabyte Marines are forced to send Optimus to go and catch it as they try and maintain control around the Dragon area. But ideally, it is not the Fizz that you want TPing into a fight unless you can get a very effective flank. And fortunately for Gigabyte Marines, they have this nice little ward sitting there on the red buff. But that could be a little bit too far away should the fight actually occur in the pit.
Haunts are just deleting those waves. Doesn't even take him a full couple of seconds to deal with them. Instead, just instantly puts him under the turret, meaning Optimus has to answer. Gives TSM more of an opportunity to try to move in here, lay down some vision, take control over this area. Big Drake to fight for. Biofrost using the Scryer's Bloom to clear out some of the vision placed down by the Marines in the TSM jungle. Nobody really wanting to get too over aggro, over zealous on this one.
It's so tense as well, right? Like,
yeah, this is one of those moments.
Everything is on the line. Nobody wants to be that player that loses your team the game, or...
Yeah, when you go back and watch the VOD, nobody wants to see themselves being the person who died.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's why we lost.
Yep. And I mean, this could be great for the Gigabyte Marines. Think about like what it would mean to beat down TSM as Stark now getting engaged on.
More damage coming through from Bjergsen. Probably wants to find at least one more orb. Goes for the ulti. Stark going to be brought very low. Biofrost and Bjerg still looking to chase this one down. And Infernal Flame going to be sidestepped as Levi makes his way into the fight. Biofrost gets himself destroyed as Stark turns on the burners and grabs the kill into Bjergsen. Svenskeren now going to be caught out. Stark goes down. Haunter's able to grab 1 kill. Might be able to find 2. Dashing back over the wall, slicing and dicing, but he is going to be cooked up real quick. Optimus and Slay turn around, grabbing the kill onto him, and 4 die on the side of the NALCS representative.
Bjergsen and Biofrost try to go for a dive onto Stark, but this guy, he got his dancing shoes out. He dodged everything that he needed to on the side of Bjergsen, baited him all the way to the tier 2 tower, and the Gigabyte Marines were able to get the collapse down and get themselves 4 kills. think about what this means for the squad right now. This is going to propel their gold lead so much further, but can they get any real objectives aside from the dragon off the back of it?
That was such an overextended chase from TSM, and Gigabyte Marines do a good job of punishing.
Oh, they really do. So you can see here, Bjergsen takes a fair amount of damage from the tower, and look at all the mana that he ends up burning trying to get this chase on the Stark. He just needs to land this Q, but sidestep. Stark knows that the W is going to come out. Again, sidestep. And while all this is going on, Optimus comes in from the flank, using his TP right behind Bjergsen and Biofrost. Meanwhile, Slay, he's behind the wall, freely getting all this damage off that cannot be punished. And the only real criticism for the Gigabyte Marines is that, I mean, he should have gone back, right? He shouldn't have given away his life. He shouldn't have given that to Hauntzer. But overall, they still get all the kills that they want. They're able to get themselves the Infernal Drake. And think about the momentum that this will now give them.
All right, the Drake bonuses are equalized between the two teams. And how appropriate for game number 5. The first 3 Drakes are Infernal, Infernal, Infernal.
Oh, my word.
Nothing better to fight for.
It's getting hot. It's hotter than my mixtape, one could say.
Damn it, man. It's getting hot in here in game number 5, and the Gigabyte Marines are the ones looking to turn it up even further as they've now got their 6-2 lead. They've got 1,500 gold in their pockets. They've got TSM in a spot where they think, where they hope, where they expect to be able to take this game to them and walk away with the victory that it looked like they were closing in on 2 games ago.
Yeah.
But now they've still got to prove it. They've still got to manage to translate this into a win, which can be very hard, especially considering TSM, like we mentioned back in game number 3, when they had such a dominating performance over the Marines, is playing like a different team than they were for the first half of this series.
They certainly are. Now, the Marines, it becomes a little bit difficult because while Stark is pretty strong, he's not as strong as Hauntzer. And Hauntzer did not have the same kind of laning phase that Stark did when he was playing Renekton. So he's got a full 60 CS advantage over his lane counterpart. He has a level up over him, and so he will constantly apply pressure onto that Rumble. You can't really send Optimus into that matchup either, because there's no confidence that he should be able to win it, and ideally, you want to keep Optimus into the lane wherever the Syndra is. So Gigabyte Marines, they're hoping to try and find themselves a pick, because in terms of the side lanes, they can't really exert enough pressure to rely on the 1-2-1 to be able to get themselves a few extra turrets there and there.
Stark's just being bullied around relentlessly by Hauntzer at this point. You can tell where that CS advantage is coming from as Levi will secure his own blue buff, keeping that away out of the hands of that thieving Ivern, as Wild Turtle will continue to just stay posted up here in mid lane, not really worried about any potential to collapse on him right now, as you did see the Chain of Corruption used the last time they shoved the wave up. Optimus forced back by Bjergsen, as Sven and Bio both hang around seeing if they can get anything in case the little fish tries to hang around too long.
And I love this from TSM, the fact that every time you see Svenskeren moving around the map, Biofrost is always there with him, utilizing the fact that he does have the Sightstone. So that you have that additional vision, the fact that you don't have all those wards coming out from Sven, you have that protection. And then the Bjergsen is just there lying in wait so that if they catch someone, you have the ability to pick and burst that target down. So you have this 3-man roaming squad, and then immediately, look, Bjerg is back up to the top lane, maintaining control over this side wave, making sure that Gigabyte Marines are never in their prime position in order to try and catch a target out.
And if we're talking about Gigabyte Marines in their prime, let's look back at Levi. 2-0-4 on this Graves, 100% kill participation, no deaths so far. We were talking about how him on the Playmakers is where we like to see him. We like to see him on more of the Kazakhs instead of the Graves. He's only played those 2 champions this series. So far, both Graves games have been losses, but this one, he is looking really good on it. He's looking like the star player he needs to be. He's looking like this superstar from the GPL region that he's known for.
And he's in a position where he can be a big carry in these fights, right? Svenskeren, he's relying on the rest of his team. He's putting the onus on Turtle, Bjerg, and Hauntzer to be the big carries in these fights. And I think that's fine, right? Like, there's no reason why these guys can't carry. Hauntzer was going wild in that last fight where he was effectively 1v4. However, when it comes down to it, Levi, when put in a situation, I kind of want to hedge my bets on Levi. Like, he's just an individual that does the craziest stuff and is always able to make it work.
He makes it work. He turns it into a success. But the game has gone rather slowly compared to the previous matches that we've seen here so far. Both teams just very cautious about how they want to play this one out, knowing that there's no more second chances. Infernal Drake in 1 minute, though, means that eventually people are going to have to start looking for those fights. Bottom lane tier 1 falls on the side of the Marines, so TSM going to go up to a 2-1 turret lead. Still down in gold by about 1,000 as Optimus looks to build that up a little bit further for his team, pushing into this tier 1 on the top side. Hopefully for him and his team, they can secure this one.
Yeah, they should.
Before the Drake comes around, then he can make it into the fight. No big deal. Playful Trickster.
Efficiency right there. Resets the auto attack as well as clearing out the rest of the wave. Doesn't take any damage either, and there's still 30 seconds. And Gigabyte Marines even have control over Scuttle. So they're in a great position. Haunts is now going to be sent up top because he has his TP available. Wouldn't be surprised if Stark actually also goes up top side and then Optimus starts pushing down bottom. Bear in mind that he's also now level 14. He has a level above Bjergsen, and that's going to be a big deal in these fights. Zhonya's and the Proto Belt completed versus the Morello Nomicon and only the Haunting guys for Bjerg. This dragon is going to be a big deciding factor in this game.
All teleports up as well. Optimus, Stark, and Haunts are all got
Everything is up. Everything is ready.
Every single summoner spell on this map is ready to fire. This is the fight. That's what happens when you have teams playing it so safely, though, not wanting to do anything for a while. The next fight that does break out always ends up going completely crazy. As TSM goes away, Svenskeren flashes.
Oh my god!
Oh man, he actually goes in for the fight and he gets everything done. Haunter now coming in from behind on top of Levi. Cuts him down, make it even more, sing sayonara as Optimus cannot do anything. A double kill for Bjerg and 4 dead bodies on the side of the Gigabyte Marines.
Unbelievable fight from Team SoloMid. I was like, Sven, what are you doing? But then he gets the steal, the flank from Haunter. Everything works out beautifully. They get 4 kills and now they're going to Baron.
We said coming into this series, Vedius, that Svenskeren, they wanted to see him step up and be that international competition buffed version of himself from Worlds. And the first couple of games, he dropped the ball. In game number 5, he goes godlike. What a hero play from TSM's jungler. Every missed Lee Sin kick, forgotten. Every potential opportunity not jumped on, forgotten because of this right here.
So he has no vision. He just flashes in, puts a brush on himself so that he feels safe enough that he won't get collapsed upon. And then this flank from Haunter. Look at how grouped up the Gigabyte Marines are. There's nothing that they can do. There's no real avenue. Optimus can't get an optimal flank. Like, the Gigabyte Marines were not prepared at all for this fight. They were expecting TSM to just hand over the dragon, and TSM said, nay, we will fight you, and we are ready.
TSM tie the game up, and now Turtle in some danger, having to try to escape from this one. Optimus going to be forced to pop that Zhonya's. Bjergsen likely going to be taken down here, but they trade him away for Slay. 1 for 1 so far. Optimus barely walking away from this one, but they keep their turret alive.
Now look at TSM. They know that they have the Baron buff, so they're moving down bottom lane. They have Daisy as well, and Gigabyte Marines, they're going to be forced to back because there's no way that they'll be able to defend this push.
They leave Levi there to at least get something for their troubles. But now Haunter has his Spirit Visage done, getting tanky on that Renekton as well as very threatening. Nice part about building all these health items is you just are so impossibly difficult to kill.
Now Levi, he could very well be in some trouble as Biofrost continues the chase.
Slowed, rooted. Biofrost continuing to look for something if he can find it, but all he finds is a couple more Marines waiting for him, so he doesn't really want to go in there anymore.
But look at the gold, though. It's actually only 2,000 in the favor of TSM. They get themselves a fair number of turrets, but it's actually still equal to that of the Gigabyte Marines. This mid lane still holds strong for Optimus and the crew. But Haunter's just, now he's reached the flame horizon. He is having an immaculate game. 16 to the level 13 of Stark. Oh my words.
Yeah, that's not even a close contest there in the top lane. Is now Stark getting himself jumped on yet again. Haunter, at this point, you don't even care about the turret damage almost. Just hanging out, putting more damage into this one. Gigabyte Marines, although the game is tied 7-7 in terms of kills, they are on their back foot for now. Svenskeren going to be caught out. A good punish, a good catch opportunity here. Juggled back, the redemption cannot save him, but Haunter is in the fight, gets one in return, but he's going to be taken down. That is a huge pickup for the Marines as they go 3 for 1.
They end up losing the tower, but the Gigabyte Marines win out on the fight. Haunter, I thought that was going to end in disaster when he just charges into all 4 members. But unfortunately for TSM, they cannot hold the line, and Gigabyte Marines, they do just that. So far in terms of gold, they're only about 2,000 behind. Levi is getting stronger and stronger by the fight. And you can just hear Sven, he's just trying to zone away some of the targets. He's not expecting Slay to use his own brush to get him caught out. And then just watch Haunter, you think, oh, this is going to be bad. Stark drops so quickly, but they just keep cutting back. Slay and Levi doing their best to make sure that he stays at arm's length. And they're able to win out in the fight 3 for 1.
Meanwhile, off to the side, Biofrost just gets dunked on by
Yeah, he got
Optimus,
dunked.
and yeah, he couldn't. There was absolutely
There was no
nothing
analysis
that,
there. It was just,
yeah.
Here is bucket, fall in it.
Fizz did Fizz stuff, and Karma died. Rip to Biofrost. 0-3 and 7 though, contributing to 7 out of 8 of the team's kills so far this game. Wild Turtle has opted for a Hex Drinker to try to stay alive a little bit better against that Fizz. Who knows, maybe it'll help him out. Stark also a big threat, does a lot of AP damage, so that could end up being the difference between life and death for Turtle as these fights go on. 4, 1, and 5 for Levi, who now has Blade of the Ruined King and Black Cleaver done on that grave.
All right, fair.
I mean, Blade of the Ruined King's strong, right?
Sure.
Why not build it on graves? Build it on everybody.
I mean, it'll certainly help with your ability to kite the Renekton, steal away his movement speed, make his life more unpleasant than it already is. I mean, I say unpleasant, he's level 17.
I mean, he's having a pretty pleasant
Yeah,
life.
he's having, he is. Right now, I think that he's having a nice warm summer's day with a cup of tea, feeling pretty good about himself.
Randu and Zoman now completed 2. 30 minutes into the game, and he's got 1 item left to build. Very convincing performance from the top lane this game for Haunter.
Meanwhile, Stark, 3rd game in a row now where he hasn't had his best of performances, only now working towards his 3rd item, which just pales into comparison of that of Haunter. And he is going to be a big deal in these fights because Optimus cannot carry them alone. Stark is going to be one of the big damage dealers, and once that Void Staff is completed, sure, then the Gigabyte Marines are in a slightly better position. But pretty much this entire goal difference sits on top of Haunter versus Stark.
Stark's up in the top lane. TP's up for both top laners right now. Optimus does not have his. You can see the Gigabyte Marines rotating towards the top side because they know they can't really contest this Drake. Instead, TSM will grab this one for free. That'll be their 3rd. Can't have any more than 3 of one kind in a game, so sadly no more Infernals. Instead, it's going to be Ocean going their way as the Marines head up topside to take the tier 2, look to make a value trade out of losing that Drake. True Shot Barrage to clear out some of the minions, but it will not stop the push. And the Marines will almost tie up this turret count, bringing the gold back under 1,000.
It was actually really smart as well because they'd pushed out mid lane too, and so that the wave had completely reset, which means that even if TSM wanted to try and respond, there was no way for them to take in mid. Bottom lane was being caught by Optimus, and so it was a very easy tower taking the top lane for the Gigabyte Marines. So now 1,000 gold, that's like nothing at this point in the game. So close, so even. The real disparity is because of Slay. He's very strong right now, especially with his itemization being completed, even though he is a little bit behind in terms of farm, which is made up for by that of Archie. But like, this is becoming a very long game, very tense. So close. Even with the Baron, you'd think that TSM would snowball that heavily in their favor, but they were only able to get a couple of tier 2 towers. Still largely in their control when you just look across the vision, a lot of it invested towards the bottom side. But Baron, with it spawning in about 30 seconds, that is where the vision really needs to be invested for both teams.
And Gigabyte Marines need to be ready to take that fight. We need to see some of that decisive, coordinated team fighting that we were talking about from games number 1 and 2. If these guys want to take down TSM around this Baron fight. Remember, the TSM setups have just been where they needed to be so far in these fights. As now Haunter puts himself in a spot trying to solo out Stark, but this isn't really going to be much of a solo attempt for long. Haunter goes just way too ham, puts himself in a spot where he can almost take down 2, but almost taking down 2 is worse than definitely taking down 1. and TSM loses their big top laner.
Yeah, and bear in mind that Levi, he went top, but the moment he realized that Haunter was dead, immediately started making his way towards the Baron. He knew that TSM would try and rush this objective down, and with Levi and Archie in the vicinity, there was no way in which TSM could commit because both TPs have just come off cooldown. Now it is Gigabyte Marines that can set up vision. That is 30 seconds on top of Haunter. Push out top, push out mid, get a push down on bottom, and then start making that play towards this big purple worm.
Good smite secured by Levi onto that Scuttle Crab as well. Every little bit of vision, every little bit of control helps. And Levi wanted to make sure he got that one for his team. We talked back in game number 1 about how he was winning a lot of smites against Finskaren, and we saw this game how Finskaren won a really huge one against him. So ultimately, if this series fate comes down to a 50-50 at Baron, it couldn't be much more poetic than that.
Oh, that would be great. But this game, it's just going above what I was expecting. I did not realize that the Gigabyte Marines had this within them. There was an element of me that thought, maybe if they play like they did versus Lions, they could bring it to TSM. And that's exactly what they did. They did do that. But TSM, they just fought back so well in games 3 and games 4. And the Gigabyte Marines now, they are bringing it even to TSM. And regardless of win or lose, they could be proud of their performance because these guys have shown up huge on the international stage.
34 minutes in, I think we can safely say that this game did go the way of a close game 5.
Oh, it did.
And considering we're 500 gold apart between these two teams, it's only going to keep going like that until we eventually have one of these Nexuses explode, but it might just come down to the final team fight. Who knows? 5 turrets to 4 turrets, though, so inhibitor line still completely intact for both teams.
But look at the two sideways. They're actually pushing in favor of TSM. Top is stacking up nicely, bot is stacking up big, which means at the moment Stark or Optimus get spotted on one of these side lanes, that gives a big avenue for TSM to try and force a play in mid.
Svenskaren and Bjergsen hanging around from the side there. Not really going to find the opportunity to do a whole lot. Here you go. Stark going towards bot side. Optimus heading towards top side. TSM will have the opportunity to do what they see fit around the Baron pit here for the next few seconds. Chicken camp fought over by both sides. At this point, they're just fighting over anything they can possibly find.
Now TSM, they have vision control around the entrance to this Baron area. Gigabyte Marines are really lacking in terms of vision. By chucking that control ward over, they'll have a little bit more. But it's difficult for them because if they face check, that is the pick opportunity that TSM find, and then they very swiftly translate that into a Baron. So they have to just make sure they have control of the sideways, and then once TSM are forced to try and respond, that is when you start moving in ever so slightly deeper to start regaining some of that control. And now, look at the darkness from Optimus. He has no idea where the enemy is, but they will certainly spot him out.
Optimus behind enemy lines.
The
Gigabyte Marines might look for the pinch here.
They're starting.
Such
Here we go.
a tense moment in this game. It could go to heaven or hell for either team, depending on who plays it right. Two-shot barrage comes through. Turtle jumping over the wall for a little bit of extra damage. Bjergsen looking to make the stun onto Slay. Not going to be doing it. Chains of Corruption come out and lock him down, but it will not result in much. The push now heading towards mid lane as Optimus comes up from behind. Lichbane, Void Staff, Proto Belt all at the ready. Mid lane tier 2 just barely dropping to the minion aggro as TSM backs away. Haunter, Elixir of Iron up, chasing Optimus out of there. Over 4,000 health on this Renekton.
So playing a very patient game, TSM, they already had the push in mid when they were fighting over their own vision, which means that it was a very easy transition after Slay had used his ultimate to just quickly take down that tier 2 in the middle lane. Very calculated, clean macro play. And now with the dragon spawning, that's actually the Elder. Look at this 2-man unit coming out from both Wild Turtle and Svenskaren. They're going to try and rush this down. Let's see how Gigabyte respond.
TSM trying to keep attention from Gigabyte Marines in this top part of the map, and they're just going to take it. This is not a team that you can expect them to dilly-dally around and not make a call. TSM now have to try to stop Gigabyte Marines from taking that Baron. Equalizer comes down. Haunter might be in some trouble. Bjergsen gonna be using the Zonius to survive the fish. Turtle tries to shift forward. Haunter's gonna be taken down, but they trade him away for Stark. It's 1-for-1. Archie taking some damage in the backline. Optimus still looking to find the damage on the Turtle if he can. Zonia's Hourglass giving himself alive. A double kill for Bjergsen. Now he's gonna get himself away. Slay takes the kill to Svenskeren. It's a 2-for-2 as both sides have low health. The piercing arrow finds its way into Turtle's back, and TSM has priority on the mid lane.
But they're all going back to base. The top laner and jungle die for TSM, but the mid and top die for the Gigabyte Marines. That was such a close fight. That could have gone either way. If anybody made even the slightest bit of mistake, that could have been game. That could have been Baron. So let's just see exactly how it happens now. Haunter, he uses his ultimate very early on, but Optimus, I feel like he goes in a little bit too early because all of the damage gets completely nullified by Bjergsen and Sonya. Now you just see the fight being played on two fronts with the rest of Gigabyte Marines trying to follow onto Optimus, who's just dived too far onto the front line. And then with Bjergsen, with a very quick flash to avoid the rest of the damage from Slay, it just results in a chaotic team fight where just the front line ends up getting focused down. Optimus trying to clean up the back line, but I think Gigabytes can get themselves the Elder Drake.
Gigabyte Marines onto Elder Drake. True Shot Barrage does not steal it away. It was a decent effort, but Levi is on top of that with a smite secure, and now these guys have themselves in a pretty nice spot. Granted, that burn isn't going to be nearly as strong as it could be. They've only got one Elemental Drake, but it's still a very significant buff. The true damage over time is nothing to underestimate.
And you deny it from TSM, right? That's
and
also a big
keep it
thing.
Away from your opponent.
So by having control over top, they've been able to push down bot. This vision line needs to move from the bottom half of the map to the top side now for the Gigabyte Marines. TSM, though, they still have main control of the sideways. Oh, Haunter, he could be caught out.
Monster popping the ulti very, very early here. Fighting back against Optimus, getting some very nice damage down on that one. Stark still looking to burn him away if he can. More TSM reinforcements are coming in. Haunter looking to make the play, and he's got the flash into the stun. Now Optimus getting back. That's 1-for-0 TSM.
Haunter playing that beautifully, buying more than enough time for both Bjergsen and Biofrost to make their way down and provide support. Gigabyte Marines thought that they were the ones that were able to find the pick, and if they got that kill, that could have been disaster for TSM. But now the TP is coming in, and TSM have their eyes on the Baron.
Haunter in the pit, clearing out some of the wards. Smokescreen doesn't actually hit Baron Nashor, so it won't aggro him just yet, but TSM will take care of that aggro real quick. Still 25 seconds before Stark is alive and can come into this fight. Keep in mind, though, Haunter does not have his ulti to properly participate either. TSM still trying to stay on top of Baron if they can. They've got it down below half. Daisy's going to be used to buy some time for as long as possible. Baron is staying aggroed, but he's just not being hurt. The TSM damage threats are focusing their effort over onto the Gigabyte Marines, and Archie is going to be dropping first. Daisy's still alive. Bjergsen going to be using the Zonias, escaping away from the fish yet again, and Baron will go to TSM.
TSM play the calm, cool game as they slowly take the Baron down. They utilize the brushes to deny vision from Levi, and Gigabyte Marines, rather than try and go for the 50-50 smite, they try and force TSM off that objective. TSM, they do not get afraid. They take their time. They know they have the numbers advantage, and the threat of that Rumble ultimate isn't there. So they're able to pick up that objective. And now with the Elder Dragon running off, it is TSM that are in the better position to close out this game.
You can see Optimus hanging around near the TSM red buff, hoping that maybe Turtle or Bjergsen would walk too close, somehow pathing through there to try to get himself a free kill, but that's not going to happen today. Guardian Angel now done on Haunter, his final item. Look at the difference in itemization between him and Stark.
It's pretty big.
It's pretty stark.
Yeah.
I normally resist doing those, but I couldn't resist it. I know.
It's
That's
fine.
my
We're
bad.
41 minutes into game 5. You're allowed
I felt
one.
bad about it, but I just had to do it. That one's for you, freak. As now the Gigabyte Marines, they're on the back foot. Their big buff has worn off. It's TSM who's got the big buff under their belts. They're the ones pushing up.
But the side lane setup from TSM is not optimal. They need to be playing on all 3 lanes to properly use this Baron. And at the moment, they're just trying to group up. And I think that with the wave clear of Levi and Slay, they're going to be buying plenty of time. You also have the Rumble ultimate too. But TSM, they still have 2 minutes left on this Baron buff. They can still continue on with their siege. And the big threat that you have with Syndra is the ability to find a pick. You land one stun and that target's going to die in an instant.
Plus, these brushes from Ivern can make it very difficult to properly retaliate against TSM when they jump backwards like you saw Turtle do right there, back into the brush. you don't know where he might be in there. You obviously have a pretty good idea, but he can shift around ever so slightly. And that can be the difference between a hit and a miss. Pushing, continuing in the mid lane from Haunser, who, as we've seen demonstrated multiple times this game, has no fear whatsoever. A very large wave of minions from the Marines crashing into the top side of the TSM base, though Haunser having to back himself up a little bit here as TSM decides to make their charge. Going forward, Stark going to be juggled around a little bit for now. Daisy doing her job and just containing him as TSM will break open the Gigabyte Marine base and take down inhibitor number 1. Now looking to make their retreat before any sort of a punish happens. The top lane still just being pounded by that minion wave.
Now, one option here for the Gigabyte Marines is if they just try and stall the backs, they could actually TP to the top lane and rush that tower down. But with the threat of the Baron passive being used to salt the backs, Levi a little bit slow there, but still. TSM, they walk away with exactly what they want. They've been able to get the bottom inhibitor. The Baron going to be wearing off in 30 seconds. Means that this is a prime position to start playing around the next Baron. With that objective gone, it will start feeding gold into Stark. And bear in mind, the later this game goes, Renekton's not going to get any stronger, but
No.
Rumble certainly is.
Rumble will get much more fierce as this game goes on. Rabadon's Death Cap, Void Staff, and Leandry's. He's actually still really scared.
He is, and he still has space for control wards. That's his plan. He put his deficit in so that he can help the team out with vision.
That's the plan. Said with a completely straight face. I went 1-5, and I'm at 100 CS deficit so I can buy control.
Exactly. Now, look at TSM. They're grouping at 5 man. They still have the Baron buff just about to wear off. And now they're looking to try and siege away from the bottom lane to make things even harder for Gigabyte Marines to respond.
Gigabyte Marines slowly finding themselves eating small losses. Now those losses are going to start to compound into larger ones. Then Scarin setting up the brush line yet again. Turtle continuing to pour the damage into that turret. Just does not care about the chains of corruption. 1 or 2 more hits to go and that turret is going to fall. The Baron Enchanted Siege minion will do the job on its own, taking that one down. And now the second inhibitor will come under fire. The TSM push continues.
So now the Baron buff has worn off. Notice there is a big stack down in the bottom lane. And Gigabyte Marines, they have to somehow find a fight. Haunser just hanging off on the flanks, zoning Optimus away, making it extremely difficult for him to really get the engage that the Gigabyte Marines want. But there's no reason for TSM to stop their pressure.
Looks like this could... Nope. Optimus looked like he might have been going towards that, but immediately decides against it. Still located just south of TSM's current position. Turtle getting auto attack after auto attack in onto that inhib. Inhibitor number 2 going the way of TSM. Levi going to be stunned up. More bursts coming through. With Syndra ulti down, TSM is happy to disengage this one, take that inhibitor as their prize, and now comes the march up mid lane, the quest for the final inhibitor to lock this game away.
And let's think back to how this all culminated into what it was. Stark dying in the bottom lane, 2v1 against Haunser. This was TSM buying enough time for Haunser to turn around and get that pick, which enabled them to have the numbers advantage to then move towards that Baron. Gigabyte Marines, if they had continued to stay alive, if they continued to play the side lanes, they were going to get to a point where they could have gone for that big fight around the Baron, but they lost that opportunity, and now they're forced to stay in their base. They have to deal with 2 super minions worth of waves knocking on their door, and TSM, their pressure will not stop.
Full builds are being struck by multiple people across both teams now, Vedius. You can see the mid laners. Yerksen now done. Optimus very, very close. Levi done with his build as well. You can say the same thing for Scarin because he's keeping those control wards in there. But both teams are just getting so close to the end game. Eventually, we're going to have that game-ending fight. We're already 46 minutes into the game. Levi forced to flash out. TSM burning a valuable summoner spell, almost catching him out there. For the Gigabyte Marines, the next fight is likely the last one. Next big fight. I don't count losing an inhibitor as a fight.
That's fair. Oh, that tower is being demolished by TSM. The zone from Syndra being enough. There's only 1 inhib left for the Gigabyte Marine. They need to make something happen soon.
They can't afford to have themselves 3 inhib.
Yep. They don't have the wave clear for it. Gigabyte Marines, will they pull the trigger? Flash is down for Levi, but everything else is up.
Optimus is here and ready now too. Stark's got his equalizer ready to fire. Root Caller over the wall finds Levi, but nobody really wants to jump in on that. Gigabyte Marines pushing out. Here we go. Haunter going to be hit by the Chum the Waters. Not the target they need, though. Piercing Arrow is also flying out. TSM immediately disengaging as soon as they see that Fizz ultimate come through, but now that that's down, this could be a window for them to potentially make some kind of an opportunity happen.
Look at TSM, they're rushing towards the Baron now. They know that there are super minions in the bottom lane, super minions in the top. Optimus's ultimate and Stark's ultimate are both down, and those are the big ultis they have to be careful of when being forced into this pit.
This is the safe play for TSM. Haunter's going to be providing peel, keeping everybody else away. Archie's not going to be allowed to walk up like that, and Baron is secured, no contest.
TSM, they're playing this so calmly right at the end of the game. They're not being too risky with any of their decisions. They know that they have a composition that at this point in the game is too strong for the Gigabyte Marines to handle. Fizz has not found a successful flank once coming into the later portions of these fights, and now with the Baron buff, they're looking to take the final inhibitor down.
Inhibitor number 3 goes bye-bye, but inhibitor number 1 has respawned. Keep that in mind. They're in the bottom lane. It's up and running yet again, so there's still hope for the Gigabyte Marines to maintain control over that one. TSM moving down towards that Elder Drake that's now going to be spawning. For the second time this game, and the fight breaks out. Levi going to be taken very low. The damage coming through, the stun over the wall. Archie is down! And TSM has found themselves one. Can they make it two? Equalizer going to be burning, but it does not matter. Here they come, TSM! Trying to get themselves this win. Unstoppable for Bjergsen. It's a 3 versus 5, and the Marines are going to have to find a miracle. Optimus is able to get 1, almost able to make it 2. The Zhonya's Hourglass, he does get the second. Now can he get himself out? Playful Trickster will not be enough, and Levi and Slay will have to hold this somehow. They pop the GA on Haunter. Turtle jumping into the fight. Slay going to be kept alive. Levi can't say the same. TSM pushing onto the Nexus turrets. Number 1 is done. The double kill for Turtle. And TSM completes the reverse sweep. North American fans breathe a collective sigh of relief.
And so did TSM, look at them. That is not the faces of a team that demolished their opponents. That is the team that looks so relieved to find that series win over the Gigabyte Marines.
And if you're Gigabyte Marines, you can't even feel bad walking away from this one, because this is a team that, like we said going into this, for North America, for the NALCS, and for the LMS, the 2 regions that were sent to the play-in stage after normally being considered one of the big 5, your goal coming in here is to make a statement, to say, look, we don't belong in the play-ins, just give us the direct invite next time. TSM is relieved to get out of that series from the Gigabyte Marines with a 3-2. TSM is relieved to have defeated them as opponents, and the Gigabyte Marines have shown that they are indeed a team that can hang with some of the best out there.
Gigabyte Marines, they showed their stuff, but as the series went on, TSM adapted. They found ways to take advantage of the style of the